speaking of lawyers, the Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison actually warned Target about their obligations to LGBTQ individuals. And of course, we know that means the LGBTQ lobby. That's what they're referring to whenever they talk about this community. So this was not just the Minnesota AG. There was a coalition of 15 AGs, and they reached out to the CEO of Target to offer support after the Pride backlash in an open letter where they said, and I quote, and please stay sitting, we understand Target recently pulled some Pride merchandise from its shelves out of concern for worker and customer safety. The letter says, while we understand that
very dangerous merchandise,
extremely dangerous merchandise.
It's going to jump off the shelves and attack you.
Exactly.
And it could implode into a hole.
Oh, okay. I forgot.
So they release this letter where, of course, what they're saying to Target is, we understand, why you were afraid. Of course, the right wing in this country is just absolutely out of control. You remember those riots that lasted for months at a time that far right group must have perpetuated. We can't get to the bottom of it. But the Minnesota AG, Keith Ellison, wrote to Target warning that their decision to pull Pride merch, and this is from Fox, by the way, this is their wording, from stores encouraged bullying and will embolden hateful methods. So hateful methods and bullying. I would say if there was an example of bullying in this story, it would probably be from the LGBTQ activist who sent bomb threats to Target. But I'm curious to hear all of your thoughts on this.
Well, we never want to empower bullying in this country. Definitely the progressive left has never, ever tried to push its agenda in a manner that would constitute bullying. They would never do that. I think this is ridiculous. It is interesting that, it is a coalition of 15 attorney generals, and the Minnesota attorney general is there. Mm-hmm. You probably already mentioned this, but Target is based in Minnesota, so there's a certain amount of pressure to get in line, fall in line with your hometown. It reminds me of the Bud Light boycott in some ways, because initially it was the conservatives saying, we won't drink this, Anheuser-Busch, you've gone too far, you're pushing inappropriate things to underage children. And then on top of that, gay bars started boycotting Bud Light, saying, how could you not vocally support Dylan Mulvaney and everything else that this community represents? And so we're seeing the same thing here. Minnesota is now saying, why are you not doing more, even though we will not acknowledge that you've lost billions of dollars.
Exactly. And so, there's just so much to pull apart here. Firstly, Target obviously has a fiduciary responsibility to their stockholders to ensure that they're not tanking the price of their company and the valuation of it, so that the people who have invested their money in them aren't, completely SOL on that.
That's not something Mr. Ellison is particularly
concerned with, as it turns out. No, the obligation is to the LGBTQ community here. And what they were saying, of course, in the letter was that they understand that there was a legitimate threat to the safety of consumers at Target. No, it was the consumers who said they were no longer interested in what Target was pushing here. That's the problem. What they're upset about is the fact that people were willing to stand up to this massive corporation and say, actually, we're not interested in having you force this nonsense onto us and our families. And of course, they call that a threat to their safety. And then they try to turn around and say, this is a threat to the safety of our customers. This is a very textbook left-wing tactic to just project. What they are trying to do is have a predatory relationship with their customers where they force any idea or perverse set of lifestyle choices onto those customers, and they do nothing about it. So they're the ones who are actually a threat to the safety of their customers. They're the ones trying to victimize them in a very real sense. When those customers turn around and leave, they say, well, the customers are actually being victimized by virtue of the fact that they're no longer shopping in our locations, because the only explanation for this is big, bad, right-wing terrorists or whatever other boogeyman they want to invent to avoid accountability here.
Yeah, I wonder too, it's just so arrogant of these attorney generals to not acknowledge that by telling Target, you have to keep this merchandise on your shelves for everyone to then take pictures of and share how it's not selling. Mm-hmm. I think one of the best things Alex Stein has ever done is go to Target and try on their tuck-friendly swimsuit, right? Like, they are...
I think Alex also feels that's one of the best things he's ever done too.
Yeah, I think
it's still burned in my mind, actually.
Yeah, you'll never forget it.
His feet has really changed since that experience.
But I just mean, when I'll draw back to Bud Light. what did we see for the weeks afterwards? Pictures of these stacks of Bud Lights not moving off shelves. And we saw more cases of Bud Light with these crazy coupons saying basically, please, we'll pay you to take this. I can see on a number of levels why as soon as this happened, Target felt like it needed to pull the merchandise and to say...
But was there really no aspect of bullying? And is this a complete fantasy? Is it the way you describe it? Or was it?
It's a total fantasy. No, it's nonsense. Their idea of bullying is you didn't comply with what I told you to do. You didn't obey me. That's what bullying means to a leftist.
Were there even? I mean, for example, the school board, the bullying by parents of school boards.
The parents bullying the teachers.
So, playing devil's advocate, which I am often paid to do.
You're a lawyer, yeah, I get it.
If parents become unruly or they refuse to respect. Everyone gets 2 minutes to speak and you went over, or you're Matt Walsh and you're too effective and compelling, But there's a sort of an immediacy and there's a sort of a menace. I'm in the most, this is pure democracy in action. But is there anything even comparable to that? Were there any pickets anywhere? Or in front of Target stores?
Yeah,
I bet there were.
I think people, it's possible, but my understanding is what they're really concerned about is just the fact that people have stopped shopping there and their stock prices plummeted. I don't know if they would be as concerned about protests.
But I think...
I think a lot of this is, I think a lot of what's happened with Target and a lot of what has happened with Bud Light isn't that there have been, right-wing organizations getting protesters together. It's just that ordinary people have said, we don't want this anymore and we're not going to purchase your product.
Well, not just that. We're not going to go to your stores. Whenever you go to a Target, what do you see? People there dragging their kids along because these are people who most of them are caregivers, and also people don't work anymore. So everyone's there with their kids. And all of a sudden, kids are looking at these displays and these bizarrely configured, articles of clothing and asking very awkward questions. And what they want to have happen is for the normal to become, your children should be exposed to this. Your children should ask these questions. And guess what? We'll even tell you how you should answer them.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And fortunately, consumers still have the power to boycott these organizations, and they would love to see that stop. Unfortunately, there are organizations that we don't have the power to boycott, segueing into our next story about the United States government and the Pentagon. So, you may have heard over the past several days, while we've been taking a break from Timcast, that the Pentagon had a little bit of an accounting error, which resulted in an extra $6.2 billion for Ukrainian military aid. I really wish that every now and again, one of these accounting errors could result in the American people getting tax cuts or money being returned back to us. But it's kind of fascinating how these mistakes seem to happen in one direction. So the Pentagon said Tuesday that they overestimated the value of weapons sent to Ukraine by $6.2 billion over the past 2 years. And I don't know, I'm sitting here thinking we can't afford not to spend an extra $6.2 billion on aid to Ukraine. And apparently they can't afford not to have it because we're still sending it over there. They still get to keep it. And there's absolutely no accountability. I can't imagine a strategy more foolish for determining how your national defense or even just expenditure is handled by putting it in the hands of people who pay absolutely no price for horrific mismanagement of those resources.
Well, that's the theme of our era, is no accountability. And certainly no one in the federal government is ever held accountable for things that they're quite rationally expected to be accountable for. I was saying before the show, as we were talking about this, that I'm surprised the Pentagon even bothered coming up with this story.
Yeah.
Since when do they even care? Since when do they need an excuse? Usually they just say, we just decided to send some more.
Well, they've failed their last 5 consecutive audits.
And yet
Pentagon,
they're still in business.
Yeah, exactly. Can you imagine? Let me ask you this. As a legal expert, are you aware of any large corporations that have failed 5 consecutive audits and just been fine, business as usual?
Well, failing an audit is a funny concept. When audits...
There's that lawyer talk.
When audits, when questions are raised by audits, boards of directors have responsibilities to follow up on those. And they have a fiduciary obligation to shareholders to make sure that problems are addressed. So you're asking the right question. The problem with government is that it is not only a word for people doing stuff together.
Yeah, that's right. That's what government means. It's just when we get together. And
it's not even just a word for.
Remember when we all got together and accidentally gave Ukraine an extra $6.2 billion when we all just got together and did that? That's what government is.
What I'm kind of wondering here is, one of the things I've kind of heard recently was that a lot of the stuff that was sent to Ukraine, it was actually the military was kind of happy to get rid of it. A lot of it was outdated stuff, and it gives them an excuse to replace those things with new and better stuff. And maybe
it's like a clearance sale, but for military.
Exactly.
Right.
Got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Got to get rid of it by shooting it at. We're not shooting it. Of course, we're not shooting it. Mm-hmm. These people are shooting it to salvage their independence and their pride. I did not mean pride.
This story,
different pride.
But you did say this story reminds me. I don't know if it's a meme or whatever. I saw on Twitter of it comes up every tax season where it's like the government. You owe me money. Me. Okay, how much? We can't tell you.
That's right.
Is it this much? No, to jail.
Exactly.
This doesn't make any sense to me because the government gets to be like,
let's stick a
we
pin
misplaced $6 billion.
Stick a pin in that in that conversation, because I think we will be coming back to it tonight again also.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.